Okay. All right. It's 9:30, so we'll get going with the Faba Bean self-help group here today. You can all air your grievances. So I want to welcome you and thank you for coming today. This event the goal was to have a few different Faba Bean buyers in the room, some customers, just people that are in that space, and so they can talk, exchange ideas. And so what I wanted to start off with today was just I got about probably 20 minutes, 30-minute presentation max on just a little bit agronomy highlights. I cut half of my slides out of my normal presentation and condensed it a little bit. So some of you are experts at growing Faba beans, some people haven't grown them that much. So I wanted to be a little bit broad and just key tips that we've learned along the way from our customers and from ourselves. I want to introduce a couple people in the room. We got Drew Sharp here from Phyto Organics, who's going to come and present after myself. We got Norman Fognes, Origin Partners. Yeah, so they are. He's going to say a few words in a few minutes as well. And then we got Christos over here. There's Christos. He can say a few words as well afterwards. So yeah, great. Hello. Hello. So what I'll do is I'll just start going through this, and then we'll have a few of the buyers and presentations afterwards. So who we are, if you don't know us that well, this year will be 40 years in the pedigreed seed growing business. We produce about 10,000 acres of pedigreed seed a year, and we would employ as many as 19 full-time people and seasonal staff and summer students. This chart I stole from Chuck Penner of Left Field Commodities. He was presenting at a Pulse Canada event last fall, and he was talking about, so subscribe to his newsletter since I steal his stuff. This is a Faba bean seeded area. It's a little bit of a rough number because there's some acres that don't take crop insurance. Some of this data comes from crop insurance. The trend has been lower, like there's been peaks, but the trend has been kind of down over the past few years. I think some of that is because not a lot has been being exported to Egypt, so that's changed how things go. Will acres be lower this coming year? I'm thinking so, partly due to drought and partly just due to some market uncertainty is my guess. And then global production, he was saying 19% decline overall, so the global market for Faba beans is down a little bit. I love it, a picture of a presentation. This is perfect, it's like Justin Trudeau. A picture of a picture, taking a picture. Feel free to take pictures, it's all good. And so this is a Pulse Canada slide, and it is the number of companies that are processing flours, fibers, and proteins and starches in Canada. So this is the number of companies, not how much they're doing or things like that, but it's just there has been a lot of growth in the last 10, 15 years. And then some of the information that getting some what are the proteins relative to yield, relative to crop type, so whether it's a pea, a lentil, and variety. So how does that variety influence, so where you grow it, the variety you're buying or growing, and how does that all influence how it fits for your end user. So some good information there that I know all the buyers are using. I thought I'd show it, just it's information for us farmers as well. And these are the main varieties that we're dealing with right now. Finally had to kick FB9-4 off that chart. That one is just, it's not as high a yielding and poor disease package. There's a small maybe market for it still, but it's very niche at this point, I think. I'm hoping Fabel can kind of fill that role for the most part. But really, so, the percentages is yield. So what percentage, so I take information that we feel on our farm compared to charts the variety trial charts, things like that. Where do we feel varieties fit? For us, I feel like Fabel's 10% better than the Czech varieties. There's another new one called Victus that's available. It's kind of comparable to Fabel, I would say, in a lot of ways. I don't fully know what the tannin level is, And that's the challenge. So the tannins are lower, say in a Fabel, but they're not like a zero tannin or a low tannin. You can't really call it zero because nobody's ever truly zero. But so I've got Snowbird in the 219-16 as low, and then the Fabel as low-ish because some people do use it for feed, and we sell our screenings for feed. There are people buying it for feed. And the Victus lowish to normal. I don't fully have a handle on where that's at. And then Nevado, it's low tannin and low visine, convisine. So that one potentially is a Snowbird alternative if you want to potentially get into the low visine market or have buyers that want to buy something like that, but an easy feed kick out as well. And then dabbling with one called Felix, which is a black seeded, very small, kind of a cover crop type faba bean. Not yet registered in Canada, but that's all going back to the States at this point for the cover crop market. So lower yielding, but very, very small, so you don't need as much per acre, so the cost per acre is still cheaper, and it doesn't mess up your blend where you're putting it with other stuff with a massive bean. Any questions on this slide before I move along from it? So still probably the most popular variety for us is Fabel, but Nevada's available and Victus is available. Actually, sorry, they're all available, other than the Felix. The Nevado looks kind of ugly. The seed coat is naturally like this was from this crop here. So you do get some of those broken open ends a little bit, so I'm thinking maybe it's a little easier to dehull for people that are dehulling than some other varieties. Germination, we've been able to hold germination at reasonable levels actually with the Nevado variety, but they just don't look super pretty. But maybe with that open-ended seed coat a little bit better, that dehulls better. So not sure where to go with this variety. It's going to be if buyers want to buy it or contract it, it's available. Disease. Most people on irrigation are spraying a fungicide on faba beans, and typically we're doing that later in the season. So peas, you want to do it kind of at first flower or short 5% flower, 10% flower, and maybe sometimes 2 applications if it's a high humidity year or you want to protect the pea better. On the faba, we generally don't spray a fungicide until kind of mid-flower, mid-potting, because you're really looking just to prevent that leaf from catching disease late in the season. So, but you can see how it looks. Some of these discolored or a little bit shriveled or discolored ones, that's possibly because the disease came into that crop sample. And then here you can see a lygus bug bite right there. Some people will mix in an insecticide with their late season fungicide to control lygus bugs as they're coming out of canola and into your faba bean crop. This is kind of a perfect looking sample of a Fabel. Not really too much disease or staining from the pods or lygus bug damage. And one comment I had from one buyer was they had in certain regions of the prairies where they don't do as many fungicides or there's more variable plant staging or things like that, they just didn't have as even a quality coming out of those regions. But Southern Alberta on irrigation generally was pretty good, was the feedback that I had. Because people were aiming for optimum yields, and they were getting just spending the money on a fungicide. It was just standard practice for those farmers. So, and then some of those people are in this room that I know they were buying from. So, rotation. Just a reminder, what do you not want to do? If you had Lontrell or Prestige on that field last year, do not grow a faba bean. You might be able to sneak away with a pea. We've done it, but don't do a faba bean. What can you put down? So we're typically using edge. Or you can use authority as well, but I like the edge because of the wild oat control, and spreads out your herbicide spectrum to control wild oats better. Don't use Express SG even though it's registered because on sandy soil it can hurt the crop. Don't follow flax. You can't kill flax out of a faba bean crop. So, and same with seed alfalfa. If you're a seed alfalfa grower and you got lots of volunteer alfalfas coming, or you're killing an alfalfa stand, you don't want to have the faba right there because you can't control alfalfa in a faba bean crop. The herbicides won't kill it. So ideally follow a cereal. You can follow a canola, we do that a bit. The flushing canola is maybe the biggest challenge, so maybe an Odyssey or something like that will help you with that flushing canola. And it's resistant to Minophyces root rot. So if you've had a lot of peas in your rotation, that's why some people are considering flipping to a Faba bean, just because they can't grow peas well anymore due to root rot issues. Just a picture so people have it of some symptoms of herbicide carryover. Typically on irrigation, I don't think I've never seen these, other than the I can never say the word clopyralid. That one I've seen in irrigation, but the rest I haven't. It's more of a dry land, dry situation kind of thing where there wasn't enough moisture to deactivate those chems from your previous crop. And that is not disease, that's herbicide splatter. So that, I sometimes get texts and whatnot about, oh, I got disease coming in. No, that was herbicide splatter from your Vasigre or your Viper application in that case. And that'll kind of go away, and that's not disease. Fertility, Fabas fix a lot of N. I would figure for nitrogen, if you get an 80 bushel crop, you could anticipate about 80 pounds of available nitrogen will come to your next crop and or the following. How fast that's all released depends on your soil, your tillage, all that kind of stuff, or lack of tillage. But generally about 80 pounds of N is fixed if you get an 80 bushel crop. And then phosphorus, it's a higher user of phos, so it's going to remove more than you're probably applying. We're typically doing about 60 pounds of 1152 in the seed row. But we're using a disc drill as well. But much past that, there's some maybe some risk of the seed burn. I've had customers with a 1-inch opener use 80 pounds of 1152. Maybe there's some risk, maybe not, but those are just some guidelines. Oh, I talked about that. Nitrogen levels. The odd person has some really high nitrogen levels, so how high do you want your N levels to be before you can say, I don't want to grow a Faba bean? Well, it's probably some economics. You don't want to just have a lazy plant taking your free nitrogen, so if you do have very high nitrogen on the field, maybe skip a year and plant a cereal and use up that N and then go to a Faba or something. I've had a customer who had 100 pounds of available nitrogen on a field grow Faba beans. They nodulated okay-ish still, the crop was very lush, but they still had a good yield. So maybe it got lazy, but it didn't seem to just stay vegetative. It still kind of produced a crop, and he had good yields that year. But once you get over 100, there's some risk of maybe the crop being more vegetative than you want it. And does it risk hurting yield and not producing as much seeds? I don't quite know, I haven't seen that happen, but there's that risk. We've been using Active Fuel, a peat inoculant that's good on seed with seed treatment up to 30 days. And so typically we're doing a fungicide, insecticide, seed treatment, and then putting that peat inoculant on. And then you can use 2 tanks on your drill if you want to, or just 1 tank. And the challenge with 2 tanks is you don't always know if seed's flowing out of both tank because you've got seed flowing, right? So you don't know if you got a plugged run here or there or something. So what we've done is had, especially with Fabel and smaller size varieties, you can get enough out of your big rollers, say like we use a deer tank, you can get enough out of a roller on that blue, or now they've got an orange roller as well, it's even bigger. But we've got the same rollers below 2 tanks, so once 1 tank drains, we switch to the following tank, and then you keep going, and then you can get your big acres out of your 2 tanks and phos out of your middle tank. Although we switched drills now, so I think we have another tank as well, so maybe it's not as big of an issue for our farm anymore. Zinc, it's sensitive to that, but typically our soils are it's not an issue, but if you know it's an issue, Faba beans are sensitive to that. Sulfur, we typically apply sulfur around a canola rotation, so we're not applying it specifically for any other crops, and it comes in your irrigation water anyways as well, so we're typically not applying. Typically what we're doing is actually just phos. 60 pounds of 1152 is kind of our typical, and then we VR, so we do VRs as well, but that's the general number. It will tolerate some salinity. It's probably the best out of all the pulse crops for saline soils. Where you've got foxtail growing, a Faba bean will grow. Obviously, if your soil's white, maybe nothing's going to grow, but some saline tolerance. And the field is left really mellow, so don't do too much tillage, if any, after the crop. You could have some erosion risk because the soil is just so mellow, even relative to a pea crop. Hello. Calibration mistakes, that can happen. So when we flip the switch to calibrate, we make sure someone else is under the drill watching the seeds fall into the catch bag. We've had it where seeds won't flow properly out of one part, and then you're miscalibrated. So just have someone under there making sure seeds fall into your catch bag as you're expecting, because that will obviously throw your rate way off. And if you have a double shoot, it's challenging to get them to drop into the bottom row. So make sure the seed is flowing into your top shoot on if you have a double shoot machine like this one in the picture. And that way, so you have to maybe change some hoses around a little bit if that's not the case. So keep that in mind. And twin row, paired row openers, there can be issues with the seeds coming out and bouncing off that twin or paired row. So some people will use the fertilizer chute at the back of that, or maybe a single shoot machine if they have an option. 4 plants per square foot is the target, and that will range from every variety is such a different seed size. So from the smallest variety to the biggest, it could be 2.5 bushels an acre all the way to 5 bushels per acre, as far as target plant stand to achieve that 4 plants. You can plant them early. We've planted very late March, early April timeframe. They can tolerate that early spring frost, but if in the perfect world, if you could plant them, April 15th, probably perfect. But as farms have other things that are priority as well, you can plant these first and plant them deep. In Australia, they'll plant faba beans 4 inches deep to moisture. So they'll come up from very low depths, but I like to plant them 1 to 2 inches deep, as long as there's moisture there.
How aggressively do you want to chase the moisture? Like, can you go down to 3 inches if you
Yep.
need to?
If you can see 3 inches deep, go for it. Yep. It'll just come up slower. So you just got to watch your herbicide. If you're going to do maybe a glyphosate burn off before they pop through, it's just going to take you a little longer. And obviously it's cold. If you're planting early April, it's slow, right? So that's one thing. Is just there's more time for your weeds to come up and pop and compete if you're planting real deep. So we like to roll fields. Faba bean pods. It seems like when you're planting really early, the pods are lower because it seems like it just keeps leafing out. Small, shorter in between. So, but in either case, we like rolling the fields because one rock at harvest time is a nightmare, right? You don't want that. Just breaking up your knife and things like that. Pea leaf weevils. This is our most recent map from the Alberta government. Probably Shelley Barkley. I'm not quite sure, but it's funny, they've moved. Like, it used to be just in the south, and then it was kind of that Highway 2 corridor, and now it looks like they've got a lot from last year's survey up in this region. In this area, they like faba beans, so if you've got a pea crop and a faba crop, put the insecticide seed treatment on your faba crop because they're going to all go into that trap crop and be in there. So they like faba beans. Or if you're going to have to spray your crop, or I've had one customer, he asked us to seed treat with insecticide one hopper on his truck and not the rest, and he used the insecticide seed treated seed around the outside edges of the field, and then the inside he just had the non-insecticide seed treatment, and he figured that would get them as they were coming into the crop and kill and suppress these pea leaf weevils. So I thought that was an interesting tactic by him. If you spray them in crop, you're not really killing the larvae down below, so you're just kind of delaying a little bit and not. So spraying is not as effective as I would like it to be. Really, the spraying is ineffective in my opinion. I'd rather seed treat with an insecticide. Staging. I somehow I lost the date on that, but that was mid-April. So we were planting early April in these shots here. So mid-April we had a little sprout coming there. By May 6th the plant was up and it was in that kind of 3-leaf stage. By June 18th, I mean, look at that, it's flowering like crazy. And by July 12th we had pods in the lower part of the plant. So I mean, this is perfect, right? You're beating the heat on flowering and potting, and that's what's going to gain you big yields. It's all in those lower pods. Water timing, I don't think I had an exact slide on that, but generally they're going to use a bit more water than say a wheat crop, for sure more than a pea crop, because you got to water, that late season watering is really important, and you got to keep that soil moist from basically start to finish. So this is a bad year to do a faba bean event. I should have done a drought event, but if you're going to if you have water restrictions, faba beans are going to use more water than some of your other crops. And basically, when do you stop watering? Well, Drew and I were talking about that. Typically, I would say as a rule of thumb, once you start seeing black pods in the lower parts of the plant, it's starting to mature. So in your higher spots or things like that, you'll see black pods starting to start there and then move their way up the plant. And once you see black pods in some of those spots and you've got reasonable moisture in your soil for the rest of the crop, I would say you're probably pretty much done watering. And because then the plants will slowly finish off and ripen up from there. But you can kind of have to keep watering until you start seeing pods start to ripen and turn black. Lygus bugs, we've seen water move lygus bugs out of the field, so if you can, it's maybe a little inefficient in watering, but we've seen it where if you get 2 passes per week through your field, so speed your pivots up late season, mid season, and that just keeps the lygus bugs pushed out of your crop by hitting that pivot around twice in a week or more. So just speed your pivot up late season to push lygus bugs out. Now it's not as efficient for watering, but the lygus bug solution, it's environmentally friendly for killing the lygus bugs, I guess. Weed control. These are some options. This slide was taken from Saskatchewan pulse growers actually, so we've got a few different options there for weed control. For us, our go-to is Edge, and then in crop, our go-to would be Viper typically, because there's not much residual risk with Viper. And then you've got your Bazagran in there as well to get that group 2 resistant kochia, which everybody seems to have. And then if you have to come later in the season because you've got a volunteer canola issue or neighbors are growing seed canola and you've got canola popping, you can do a Bazagran really at any time in crop. There's some restrictions on that, but I've seen Bazagran go on at flower timing, and maybe you will blast some flowers with that, but if you have to control volunteer canola, there is an option. So chocolate spot, I think people called all leaf disease chocolate spot on faba beans in the past, but in reality, it's not really all chocolate spot. It's more alternaria and other diseases that are actually happening in the crop. So not as much chocolate spot out there as I think researchers and us thought, and really what we were listening to was researchers because we didn't really know either. But alternaria is on the right. You can see that more gray, whereas the chocolate spot, it looks more like someone took a paintbrush and flicked it on the plant. Oh, and that top picture, there's like a growth on the pod there. I'm not actually sure what that is. It's some sort of a disease or fungal growth, but it's not really seems like it caused issues, or we don't see it all the time, but we have seen it. And just a shot on lygus bugs, we kind of talked about that, using the pivots and or a late season insecticide mixed with your fungicide for controlling these guys to prevent black spots. I will ask Drew how they feel that black spots are going to impact the process of dehulling or fractionation as well. Timing. So on the left in that top picture there is a faba bean plot. So we're harvesting peas on this field. They were all planted at the same time on this field. We're harvesting peas and the faba beans are grass green. So if you're new to faba beans, they are longer season. They're going to be similar to your wheat for season length typically. Last year we had a lot of problems with green straw. So the picture with the combine and that lower picture, we were able to get through that crop, but it was more challenging for the combine operators. And the beans were dry, but the straw was pretty green. And that straw actually, it ended up regrowing, and we have beans regrowing from that green straw in the fall, and it just sent out a tiller, regrew, and started flowering and fixing in again. So it was kind of crazy. But yeah, no frost. The Reglone didn't really do the stems, and it wasn't really variety specific. It was just the year. Kind of a net return chart. Fabas are still in the running, I think. I have an $11 value on that. Take that for what it's worth. I don't know where it is or should be. I left peas at 11. So all these numbers and yields, I mean, they're not going to be exactly what your farm is, but it's a rough gauge, right, to compare crops. And I compared it all to wheat. So, and I've got a little bit of an N credit here for the pulse crops. Whether you actually use that N credit or not, or you kind of ignore it and just expect bigger yields or higher protein, that's kind of up to you. But yeah, even without the N credit, you're looking at comparable returns to wheat with a break up your crop rotation. Yeah, assuming $11 value for a faba bean and an 85 bushel yield versus like say a hard spring, a $9 value and a 100 bushel yield. So am I being too high yield on the wheat? I'm not quite sure. Maybe this is like the perfect field situation, but if you can get 100 bushel wheat, you should be able to get 95 bushel fabas actually, so maybe I should have adjusted that a little bit. So, but yeah, if you're a 100 bushel wheat person, you should be a 90 plus faba person, in my opinion. Marketing, just throw this up here for a sec. There's a few different companies and buyers, and I'm probably missing some people on here, but these are people that are in the business that we've sent customers to in the past. I've got one company right now is, actually I'll talk about them when I throw their slide up actually. So that's all I have for my presentation before I flip into a quick one from Prairie Faba, just to introduce them but any questions before I flip out of this presentation?
What do you recommend for speed for seeding?
Start slow, so start at 3 miles per hour, and if you don't get plugging, go speed up until you get plugging. So it's all about the plugging, but start at 3. Yeah.
What's kind of the average? 4, 3.5?
Depends on your opener and your drill and the seed size and how many bigs are in there. Like we size our bigger varieties, we'll size them, so we'll scalp and kick out the big ones as well, so you can try and get a more uniform size. But we're not kicking lots out, like we're kicking the top 5% of the big guys out, and then and sizing them a little bit more even, because evenness is just as important as kicking the big ones out. But yeah, if you've got, like, so our drill's a disc drill. The seeds flow pretty good through there, but there's times where you'll get 2 seeds coming into the same hose at the same time. You get a plug at the top of the hose and the distributor. So it's seeding is always the challenge. Seeding and marketing this crop. So yeah, it's a bit of a feast and famine kind of crop for the market side and seeding side. Once you've done it once, you kind of figure it out, but the first time is it can have its challenges. So that's why we generally say meter out of 2 different tanks, or 1 tank can work if you've got the right rollers. We've had issues, the newer New Holland drills that have that cartridge type meter that you punch in there, those ones some people have had some challenges with getting the seed through those little slots in the New Holland newer tanks. Whereas like the old FlexiCoil meters were great, the Deere meters work, the Burgo meters work. On a Burgo, if your augers are worn a little bit, the Faba beans are very tough and they'll jam and stall your auger. So you almost have to like make sure your flighting's reasonably good, so that it doesn't stall out your auger motor on that Burgo metering system, because they'll jam in there. So, and they're just so tough.
They do have an actual Faba bean auger for
Burgo's got a Faba auger? Okay, talk to your dealer on that if you're a Burgo person. Thanks, Gil. Yeah.
What a 455 John Deere desk drill work.
Box drill? Yeah. Paul, is that what you got a 455? Yeah, so Paul back there seeing them with a 455. And I think we've done it ourselves too. We have the same thing. Yeah.
How many inches of water do you figure you used last year to grow?
So in that last year, I'm betting it would be 17, maybe 17 inches applied. Whatever your wheat water use is, I would assume 2 to 3 more. That's my assumption. In that really hot year, was it what was the really extremely hot year? 2021 maybe, where it was like 40 degrees for like 40 days. It was I think we used 18 inches of water on them that year, but we had insane yields. Like everyone tells you Faba beans will get flower blast and shut down once you hit like 35 or whatever, 26 degrees and above hurts them. Well, that year we just kept pouring the water. The pivots didn't stop for a month, and thankfully Nathan was ahead on watering, or reasonably caught up, and just kept those things moving. And I think we averaged 90 bushels across the entire farm that year, and we had 15,000 acres, 1,500 acres of Fabas that year. It was crazy. We couldn't believe it. So we were, and we were getting melted. Like the leaves would melt, so you get wilting of some of these leaves from the heat, because the pivot hadn't been there in a day or whatever. They're wilting, and the leaves just died, like dried right. They wilted, and it was like they died right off. It's crazy, but didn't get much blasting that year. I was really surprised. So, anything else before I flip into the next presentation? Okay. Well, we can ask more as well later. Okay, I'll flip through a few of these fairly fast because some of them is more about their company than anything else, but that automatically advanced. Okay. I think because they're going to automatically advance, I'll just go like this, maybe. I was inspecting the irrigation supply there. Or that was not me, that's my son. So Prairie Faba, they're based out of Glenboro, Manitoba. We've dealt with them in the past and sold some excess supplies to Prairie Faba. She couldn't be here today, she wanted to, but she had a conflicting event that she had to be at. So they are making like a Faba bean food products and flowers for food products. And they have bought Fabel variety from our customers in the past. Currently, they have a new crop price out right now. So they're talking $10 picked up at your bin in Alberta here, and then as high as $1.50 more if you're going to store it till next, like the following summer. So you gain a bit of money for storage. So that's their new crop price at this point is $10, and then with a storage bonus as well. Now, if you want to deliver it there yourself, like that, there was, I believe. Oh, now I had it in my other presentation. Now I forget it, but anyways, think of it as a rough number: 10 picked up, and as much as $1.50 more if you're storing till the following summer. So that's a pretty good storage fee, I would say. The issue with storing, I forgot to mention, if you don't have your beans in an aeration bin, you can get a cap on top. So if you don't have an air bin, even if your beans are really dry, you can still get this moisture migration and it forms this cap on top. So before you ship, you got to climb that bin and make sure you don't have that cap on top of there. If you have them in an air bin, it doesn't seem to be an issue with like an aeration type bin. Even if you ran the air early and don't run it later, it just seems to solve that issue. There's enough air moving through the vents and the system in that bin somehow. So keep that in mind as you're shipping those pretty Faba beans out to people. And that's Haley and Kale right there. I don't know what else I want to say about them. They're a good option for you to talk to, anyways, is what I would suggest. What else? They're a pretty consumer-focused company and working directly with like food manufacturers. And they only do Faba beans. That's all they do. Well, they like to call it Fava, so she doesn't like it when I call them Faba beans. and I've actually tried these puffs. They're making this Faba bean puff actually, so it's going to come to market and be available like on Amazon and stuff like that. So kind of a cool little thing. They were pretty tasty actually, similar to like a cheese puff. What else do I have for her? But thank you. Okay. Anyways, they will pick up your bin, or you can deliver lambs to them. I can give you her phone number if you don't have it, and that's all I have for Prairie Faba. So, any questions on Prairie Faba before I flip that over to? Maybe I'll introduce. Maybe I'll add Norm after first, and then I'll go to Drew. So, any questions on Prairie Faba? I like them. They pay. So it's good.
How long have they been around?
I think 5 years, or 2015 they were established. So they're seed. So Jeffrey's Seeds in Manitoba is who they are. So Kale takes care of the seed side of the business, and then Haley started this Prairie Faba. I was on the Pulse Canada board with her for a few years, and then she started Prairie Faba. So 2015. And yeah, that's her deal is the Faba bean, and I believe Arlene Dickinson's involved from Dragon's Den somehow with her. I don't quite know how, but I've heard that, so don't know. So yeah, they've been around a bit, and we've sold to them a couple years ago quite a bit. So that year where we had all the acres, I don't know, a few of them went to her. So. Norman, do you want to come say hi? We've got Norman Fodness here. He is with Origin Partners and kind of in everything, but maybe in Faba beans as well. Go ahead.
Okay, well, good morning. So to begin with, I come here as a participant, not as a presenter.
But I want to introduce you anyways.
That's okay. So I'm here roughly. My name is Norman Fodness, and I've been in agriculture pretty much my whole life. So, I'm here representing Origin Partners. Origin Partners is a grain company that operates out of Oakbrook's. It's got two fellows that are well versed in trading grain and feed byproducts, all the odds and sods that's left over, whatever you produce, right? And so, as a general rule of thumb, we act as principals. So we buy it from you, pay whatever kind of arrangement you like, and we turn around and sell. Right? So we don't have any hard assets. We're working on having some hard assets, but at this point in time we don't. So we do all the logistics, we do all the trading, we do all the risk management, we do all that kind of stuff. And our head office is at Oakbrook. So that's kind of Origin Partners. And we're really not trading faba beans right now. We've traded some. We're not trading much right now. But we've got a keen interest in it. And we will be in the faba bean business here for new crop and going forward.
So if they had something in the bin right now, they could tell you about it?
If you have something in the bin right now, yeah, you can talk to me, you can talk to us about it, and we'll see what we can do. But we're not out with the price, we're not out with the new price.
Okay.
At this point in time, but it's coming.
Okay. Sure. So the first time I probably knew you or met you was with at Lethbridge Inland Terminal. You were the CEO or?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan is one of our directors. So
Yeah.
I had spent 25 years, 26 years with United Grain Growers.
Okay.
And I left United Grain Growers and worked a little bit for Alberta Wheat Pool. At those days, I went to Saskatchewan and developed the business model of 50 joint ventures with producers and Alberta Wheat Pool and Agricor and Agricor United to build these big high-throughput grain growers, right? And so Agricor United was gonna build a big one in southern Alberta, but it never happened. So in that whole process, we got to know a lot of farmers. I knew a lot of farmers knew me. So the RK Hagee and Larry Nolan and Ryan Mercer and a few other guys put together a plan to build this inland grain. So we raised some money. I think we have about 119 shareholders. So we raised, I don't know, $3 million and we built another 5 or so, and we built a big grain terminal, 40,000 ton grain terminal, 100-car spot, started a grain company, built this terminal. So we raised the money in 06, we started building in 07, we finished in 08, we opened up, I think we had our grand opening October 08, we run it until 2014. Lycara come along and wanted to buy it. So we ended up selling it to Lycara in February of 14. So it wasn't good.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Drew, you might as well come and talk. If you want, help yourself to more snacks or juice or coffee as Drew's getting set up. So. Still going? Okay, thanks. So we're recording this stream, but we'll blank out the, we'll have like.
That's all, yeah.
Anything that's sensitive will be
It'll get fuzzy.
confidential at the
Yeah,
bottom.
so whatever, if you want to edit a little bit, we can do that.
Sure, yeah. All good.
Anyone in the faba bean business needs to drink lots of coffee.
Fully caffeinated.
You know what? I forgot to introduce you as well, Blair.
Oh, no, that's okay.
You're good? I'm going to introduce Blair. I forgot.
You don't have to.
So I think Drew's pretty much ready to get going here. I missed introducing Blair Baylog, so Blair, our seed sales specialist, so you probably all know him or have talked to him, but anyways, Blair. he's probably 80% of the seed that goes through our farm now, Blair is selling, so doing an amazing job, so anyways.
Thanks, Greg.
There you go.
All right.
Drew,
Well, I will
Phyto Organics.
Yeah, I'll get started off here. So I'm Drew Sharp with Phyto Organics. I have to give this little kind of like asterisk note before I present every single time. Not organic. So Phyto Organics is spelled with an F, not organics. When I spent about 7 years in the malting world before Chris recruited me into this position, and when he told me I think I want the company to be, well, the company's called Phyto Organics, it's like, ooh. All right, well, we'll work with that. But really, we're sourcing conventional fava bean. It's in conventional business. If we grow into the organic space, that's fine, but I don't think so. I think year in, year out, there's about 100,000 tons of fava bean produced in Western Canada per year. So it would be basically impossible for us to fuel our 30,000 metric ton facility on organics because that volume just doesn't exist. And I always tease Chris about the fact that we should change the name. And the last time I bugged him about it, he actually seemed kind of receptive. So we'll see if that can go through, because I do actually think it causes some confusion with growers. So this is the dream here. And maybe just I'm a glutton for punishment. You can tell because I'm in the fava bean industry. But if anyone needs to shout out and say like, hey, I agree with that, I don't agree with that, like talk to me. This doesn't need to be me doing a monologue. Like we can make this dialogue here. Just informal. So we're looking to build a 30,000 metric ton facility in Strathmore, Alberta. We want to be Alberta's first commercial fractionation facility. There's so much infrastructure in Saskatchewan, in Manitoba, dedicated to fractionation, but it hasn't been able to get off the ground here. And I know there's lots of starts. Greg's showing the buyer list, but it just hasn't happened in Alberta yet. We want to be the first value-added pulse fractionation agribusiness to service the farmers of Alberta and to be that stable base of domestic demand for your fava bean, so that the price is more inelastic. You see various volatility in the amount of fava bean produced globally. Chuck Penner said that it dropped by 19%. Well, in Canada, yes, acreage goes up and down. We need to create the domestic demand centers here so that you can grow fava beans profitably every single year. I want to be the maltster, the crusher, the place where you get your beans processed. Just quickly here, kind of looking at some prices. So what I like to do is track yellow pea prices as an indicator for fava beans. So maybe just to quickly walk you through how we think about this. Food grade fava bean, that would be your export grade fava bean. That's the top line, blue line there. Bottom line is feed fava bean, and then yellow pea, that's kind of just track Southern Alberta yellow pea price. We want to be offering about $1 a bushel premium to the export grade fava bean price. For that, we like probably the maltsters that you've maybe dealt with, some of the crush facility. We do want some information back for you about your practices, just so that we can give our customers an extra material piece of information about their product. They want to know that it was grown according to the amazing standards that Canadian growers all grow their food at, because they're regulated to do so. But it does actually help. People are interested in these things. Any questions on this slide? I kind of went through that quick. Yes, just like quiet. That's good. I'll talk lots here, and then we can do conversation at the end. So this is, I need to update these numbers. Greg showed his chart, but I really do think that in the irrigated and black soil zones, brown soil zones under irrigation, this is just a phenomenal crop. Again, and moving from the malting barley world, if you can pull off yields of 90 bushels an acre, getting 11 or like $12 per bushel for us is what we'd be thinking about opening our bids at. It's going to make you some money, and the amount of nitrogen fixed by fava beans is it's really second to none. It's an incredible crop. We need to start getting contracts out there for it. So the way we think about this, and I don't know that we'll be contracting this year. Our plant, we will start moving dirt this summer. We think it's going to be a 13-month build cycle, but that's optimistic. So I don't want to get in a place where I'm going out to the growers here and saying, okay, well, let's do contracts, but not be able to take it. I think that's going to get me into a bad position, and I fully realize that there is a fatigue about the fractionation industry, and I want to be very, very cautious with what I do, because you are the core faba bean growers here, and if I contract with you and then can't take it, you might not want to do business with me again. You don't know me. I haven't had a real reputation built in the industry with you. We're not a Roquette. We're not a Louis Dreyfus, so we have very little room for error. So we want to make sure that we do right by you and contract when we are fully capable and know that we can take your beans. So, just talking about interest in Canadian faba bean, I just did a quick chart here about global faba bean production. So interestingly, China produces most of the world's faba bean. They produce about 30%. But it's not the faba bean that we would kind of consider regular faba bean here. It's something that they would call a horse broad bean. So very flat, very round. And it's not necessarily the difference between like a green and yellow pea. It's the same species, but it is quantifiably different in its, its sensory, like how it tastes for customers, the ingredient functionality you can produce with this bean. So China, even though they produce a lot of faba bean, none of it is really a fit for the fractionation market. Australia is actually very similar in terms of production to Canada. I think they produce, 10% of the world's supply. And on average, I think we produce about a little over 5 million tons globally, so 500,000 tons there. And they're producing what we consider more common faba bean as well as horse beans. But when we think about what customers are really looking for faba beans, it's this low lysine conlysine variety. And in Canada, we actually only can breed from now on low lysine conlysine varieties. We think that less than 10% of the global faba bean production are these low lysine conlysine varieties. Lysine conlysine, that's an anti-nutritional, it can cause allergic reaction. So if you're a global ingredient manufacturer, you have to source your low lysine conlysine beans from around the planet to make sure that you have enough geographical diversity so that if there's a drought in Australia in any of those regions, if there's a screw up in the UK because it's soggy and rainy all summer long, you still have some sourcing in Canada. So that's what we've seen at the counterparties that are engaging with us in offtake, looking at Canada as a place to have a high quality production that they can kind of source within their global supply chains of low lysine conlysine beans, which is good. That's a good news story for Canadian farmers. Canada's faba beans are needed. Let's summarize that slide that way. Headlines for the pea protein world, and I think this is maybe the most exciting thing that's happened to the faba bean world in the last 10 years. If you haven't heard about this, peek your ears up. And it's not just faba beans, frankly, this is like the plant protein market in North America. Canada's plant protein manufacturers, doesn't matter if it's concentrate or an isolate manufacturer, their prices have been below pea protein products. This summer, it was found, actually Cargill and Purus, Cargill actually owns a large percentage of Purus, which is a fractionator in the US. They filed an anti-duty claim against China. The United States Department of Commerce investigated and found there was merit to this claim. So they will be applying duties, countervailing duties, to imported faba bean from China, which is excellent for you, for demand for plant protein. Just a calendar here, so petitions filed 2023, investigations, preliminary determinations by the US Commerce Department, February 7th, and we found, going back to this slide, the countervailing duties and anti-dumping percentages were anywhere from 127 to 600, 300%. So that's going to be hugely impactful. That means any of the current users of pea protein isolates and concentrates in North America will not be able to source cheap product from China, North American demand can and will grow. And going back to Greg's slides here, I think that there is a growing number of fractionators in the space, up to 2023 we're growing. I think we've almost been, I think it's called the Gardner Height cycle. So in the plant protein space, there's this like idea of, okay, everyone gets really excited and then everyone gets to the peak of euphoria, and it's an irrational euphoria about the industry. Then over the last years, I think we've gone down into the trough of disillusionment where once you've looked at Beyond Meat's share price and said, oh, this is a more challenging industry. But what I think is happening now is we're getting into this more leveling off and growth stage that will be happening in the Canadian market over the next decade, really because of some of these strong tailwinds. And the companies that haven't gone bankrupt, that have made it, that have proven that they know how to handle cash, that they know how to create project management plans in their facilities and can execute, they will be rewarded. So I think that there might be some dropping off from some players in this industry, but I think the ones that remain are going to be benefiting in a large way from some of these tailwinds. And one more thing, I forgot to talk about it quickly here. So the varieties that we're interested in are, well, we've done, with the help of Stamps and some others, a number of variety tests on different faba beans to find what would be the best within our portfolio. So we did 4 different varieties. We tested the functionality of the varieties, so how that fits into a food ingredient, the sensory characteristics of the varieties, so how does that smell and taste in a food ingredient, and just as the concentrate itself. And of course, we looked at the agronomics, and we see that through that research, we found that Fabel seemed to be a variety that has a fit for a number of food applications and works well on farms. So, just looking here, this is an image of Alberta. So this is data from AFSC. All these little polygons here are the actual risk areas that you'd see in the Yield magazine. And what this is just data from AFSC. So to Greg's point, recognize this is directional. There might be up to 30-ish% of this of acres missing. But just look here, let's just peek back through history. So this is faba beans in AFSC data, 2017 snowbird, 2018 snowbird, 2019 snowbird, 2020, we got some malic in there. All of a sudden, 2021, we're seeing some Fabel, right? 2022, more Fabel. 2023, more yet, a little bit of 2019-16. But all I'm trying to show here is, I think that based off the acres of Fabel grown, farmers are realizing that it is a profitable variety to grow. I think we're going to see an expansion of Fabel in our acreage evolution charts. And I think, like us, other Prairie Faba, other processors see the merits to this variety. And as the tailwinds build behind this marketplace, I would expect Fabel, and we're looking at other varieties, newer varieties as well, will continue.